Welcome to another issue segment of It's Sports Magazine TV. Can you tell how excited I am? Let me introduce our panel before we introduce our great person that we're going to be interviewing today. We got Leo Haggerty, who is our editor-in-chief of It's Sports Magazine. He's been carrying the torch for content. He's of course, a local and international sports icon. And then we also have Abby Hope and Andrew Trophy, who are interns from the University of Tampa Sports Management Program. And then we also have Adam Stops Tyler, too, who's our senior columnist working out of South Florida. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Donald Hartman. And Donald, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself today and a little bit about Rider College. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. And again, my name's Don Harnum, and I'm the athletic director at Rider University, which is in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. I've been at Rider, and Leo knows this, since 1989. I started as the graduate assistant basketball coach, then assistant basketball coach, associate head basketball coach, head basketball coach. And then in 2005, they decided it was a good idea to make me the AD. And I've been the athletic director ever since. So I'm starting year, 32 or 33 at Rider, which doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth because I never thought I'd stay that long. But I've had a lot of different roles, and it's been a really, really good place to work. So again, appreciate you guys having me on.
Don, you were a successful head men's basketball coach at Rider for 8 years. Summer 2005, I was at Rider when you decided to become the AD, and I could see on your face, before you even told anybody, you were agonizing over that decision. How hard was it for you to leave coaching?
Yeah, I mean, agonizing is probably the right word, Leo, because, on the one hand, I was flattered. Like, I had no idea it was coming. We had no previous meetings. And all of a sudden I get called into the president's office and say, I'd like you to be the AD. I'm like, me? Why me? And, I was 42 years old at the time, coming off an appearance in the championship game and a 19-win season. And I had a young man in the program named Jason Thompson, who eventually became the 12th pick in the draft, the NBA draft. So it was a very hard thing. And I liked coaching. I liked it. I felt, without sounding egotistical, I felt like I was good at it. But there was another side of me that was like, it's a hard job. And my wife and I just had our second child, and that was a factor. Like, okay, if I stay coaching, I'm probably not going to be around for them to grow up a whole lot. People don't understand how much you're on the road recruiting and how much the wins and losses take out of you and due to your personal life. So there was a balance. But the interesting story, Leo, is I kind of turned it down at first. And the president called me back in and reoffered it to me. And my dad had the same career path, and he was trying to talk me into it. So I agreed to do it interim for 1 year. And I told him, if I'm miserable at the end of these 9 months, can I take my team back and you hire an AD? And the president said yes. I thought he would say no. As soon as he said yes, I had to say yes. And I took the 9 months to evaluate it. And I came up with a list of things that needed changed in the department, things I wanted to do. And, the president at the time said yes to every one of those. And for the first 2 or 3 years, I did question the decision. I still agonized over it. Now, I know they're making a lot of money coaching. You couldn't pay me to go back and do it. So it was kind of a no-brainer decision at the time that I didn't realize.
You know what, Don, unless you're a Jersey guy, you say Rider, people go, oh, you're the Broncos. No. Tell us a little bit about Rider.
Oh, Rider's, a smaller, mid-major school. We have about between 4,000 and 5,000 students. If you count grad school, about 2,500 that live on campus. But we play Division I, and we're very, very competitive. My baseball team just landed in Monroe, Louisiana, to play Louisiana Tech on Friday in the NCAA baseball tournament. So we win, we're successful. But we're not one of those overly resourced schools. It's a household name. So it's a tough job that you constantly have to work at. And I have the benefit right now. I've gotten lucky and I've hired some really good coaches that understand Rider, how to recruit to Rider. But we have talent everywhere around us, Leo. We're right outside of New York City, right outside of Philly. Jersey's populated with talent in most schools. So we do our fair share of good recruiting, which is always, the key to making the team successful.
Don, Rider University sounds like a really great place. I'm just hearing you're missing women's lacrosse.
We are. And actually, we've had some discussions about possibly adding it. Abby, it's one of those decisions, like we're not a fully funded program. Everybody thinks, well, if you're Division I, every kid on the roster is on a full ride. Outside of men's and women's basketball, there are very few student athletes on our campus that are on a full athletic scholarship. So one of the things that I always wrestle with is, okay, do you add another sport, women's lacrosse, to your point, or do you invest in what you have already in the name of winning? And that's been a constant battle. But if it makes you rest easier tonight, women's lacrosse is on the radar, although we haven't committed to it yet.
Great to hear. Yeah, going off of that, before the pandemic hit, was it an advantage or disadvantage that Rider doesn't offer football?
I think it's been an advantage before the pandemic and certainly during the pandemic. Smaller schools like us, 4,000 or 5,000, football is a real cost. And not only is it a cost to be any good at it at all, you have to really spend a lot of money. And then it throws off your Title IX numbers like no other sport does. So we get that question all the time. When are you going to add football? Well, if we did, it would be an investment in a stadium, coaching staff, offices. And the reality of it is that investment, let's be honest, would probably produce mediocre football at best. And everybody thinks football, and I know you guys are down south, so football rules. You see the pageantry of big-time college football. Mid-majors can't create that with the dance team and the band and the cheerleaders and all that. We can't create that without a major investment. So football is not on our radar right now, nor is it on many smaller schools like our size in the Northeast. The math just doesn't work, in a lot of ways. And I'm not anti-football. I love the sport. I like to watch it. I just don't think it would effectively work at a school like Rider.
Yeah, so kind of going off that, since you didn't have to worry about getting a football team ready to participate in a season because of the pandemic, like would you say that's a plus or a minus for you guys?
I think it was a plus because you guys saw the national debate. Can you play safely? And football's a tough one because it's obviously not only a contact sport, a collision sport. And at the time, you saw how the Big Ten handled it. There was so much paranoia, information, real information, misinformation out there. It was really hard to figure out what to do. And I thought it was definitely a risk that people took by playing. But I think as time went on, it wasn't necessarily the football practice or the game that caused the spread of the virus. It was real life. It was, okay, now you got to put 45 people on a bus, on a plane, in a hotel. You have to eat your meals out. You have to leave campus and then come back to campus. It was more real life than the actual athletic activity that was causing the spread of the virus. But, we don't have football, but I do have top 20 in the country wrestling. And I'm sitting there watching this football struggle going, how are we going to wrestle? I mean, and it took me a while to kind of say, all right, well, if we're testing them 3 times a week. So Leo, if you or I were wrestling and we're both tested 3 times a week, by the way, I would win. But if we're testing, It's not even close, Leo. I mean, you might be a higher weight class than I am, but I'd still
You're
find a
killing
way.
me.
But anyway, if the two guys that are wrestling have been tested 3 times a week and don't have the virus, how are they spreading it no matter how much contact there is? So we actually got through an abbreviated wrestling season, hosted our conference playoffs, and sent 6 guys to nationals, including one individual that got all the way to the national championship match. We were the only, Rider University was the only mid-major represented in the finals of the NCAA wrestling. Everyone else was from a Power 5 conference. So we did it, but at the time, I think we all learned as we went. And, I kept telling people, you got to be patient because I don't have the answer for you yet. It took time. Every time you turn on the news, the message would change. But I'm really glad that we did trudge forward and get through it. Because I think for the mental health of the student athletes, I think it would have been worse not playing. Not that it was great playing with no fans and with all the restrictions, but it would have been worse if we chose not to play.
Hi, Don. I was having some technical difficulties earlier, so I didn't have a chance to say hello with everyone else. But piggybacking on what Andrew had said about whether it was a plus or minus on having football, and you said it's all about risks and you guys didn't have to worry about that. But being in Lawrenceville outside of Trenton, there was a large caseload in New Jersey and it was hit pretty bad. In terms of risk, did you have an issue in getting students to come back to campus even in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, New York and New Jersey were 2 of the hardest hit states early on, and that certainly caused, some panic in the beginning and a lot of conservatism as we went along with it. So yeah, I mean, we ended up, it was agonizing, canceling fall sports. We brought students back to campus. I mean, we normally have about 2,400 students on campus, and we only had about 1,000 live on campus all year. A lot of students said, well, and I can't really blame them. If you're going to go with remote classes, which almost everybody in the Northeast did, why would I come live in a dorm and sit on a computer? And it was a strange year. I feel bad for college students this year. We normally have a pretty vibrant campus with concerts and festivals and a lot of hype around athletic activities. There was none of that going on. It was not your typical college experience for the general student population or for the student athletes. But, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel right now is very refreshing because I don't know if I could take another year like that.
That's crazy that you say that. I was talking to you earlier when we first started. Again, my name's Jeffrey Neal Fox. I'm the publisher of the magazine. With everything that coaches had to go through to field the team last year, some were actually fired. Do you feel that was an overreaction because so many things were out of control with the coach and their staff? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would think it would be a year where people would be a little more lenient in forgiveness and all that. And I'll give you a perfect example with our basketball team. We have as Leo knows, a very strong tradition in men's basketball. We have a gym that sells out, that we've won 75% of our home games in. It's like a little mini Cameron indoor stadium, and the place rocks. And we were coming off a year where we were 18-12, the 3rd seed in the tournament, when the plug got pulled the year before. And we had 4 1,000 point scorers graduate. We had 2 individuals take advantage of the graduate transfer rule. One of them actually came back for this year, which is good to see. So we ended up with 11 new players on our roster off of a 3-year stretch that was outstanding. We were 32-5 at home the previous 3 years. So we had with 11 new players, we had no summer school. We were not allowed to bring them on campus in the summer. No summer workouts, no lifting. We started later in September than normal because we were not allowed athletic activity at all until about mid-September. Then we start practicing, and right before our first game, we have a couple of positive cases. 14 days in quarantine. Then we come out and we get drilled by Syracuse. Well, what did you think was going to happen? And I still had some people that were upset. Oh, that was ugly. That was bad. I'm like, guys, do you understand? We got 11 new guys. They don't even know their names yet. And we just spent 14 days in quarantine. Now, we threw the word quarantine around very loosely this year. Do you know what quarantine is? It's each person in a dorm room by themselves, not allowed to leave the room for 14 days, having meals delivered. And at the time, we weren't allowing any athletic activity. So you come out of quarantine, you're not in shape. You forgot all the plays you learned the weeks before, so it took us a little while to get going. And once we got going, we had another positive case that led to another. At this time, it was a 10-day pause. So the whole season was disjointed. And I just kept telling my coach, who's been with me now for 15 years, 9 years as the head coach, I'm like, stop stressing. This is almost a throwaway year. Your main purpose is to take these 11 new players, make them better, and aim towards next year. That was our approach. And maybe some of the fans didn't like it. But you're not going to be great every year. This was a strange year that was unlike any other. And I think Kevin, my coach, finally bought into that. Like, stop putting pressure on yourself because you're not getting it from me. And we're going to be back better and stronger next year. And that's all you're coaching for this year. And we ended up finishing fairly strong, winning a playoff game. It wasn't a good year, but we got them all back. And, they're going to be here for summer school in a couple of weeks. And I think things are going to be back to normal. And I think we're going to be pretty good.
You know what, Don, when the NBA pulled the plug last March, all people talked about was March Madness. Did you have any other teams out that you had to try to find a way to get back to campus at Rider?
Yeah. We had our baseball team was about to play the College of Charleston. And we had to make the call to them and say, hey, get back to campus. Obviously I was in Atlantic City for the men's and women's basketball tournament. We host them together in Atlantic City when the presidents of our league made the call. And it was the strangest day ever. We're sitting there waiting for the presidents to make the decision. And meanwhile, the Big Ten pulled the plug and the Big East pulled the plug. We're watching all this unfold. And our coaches knew it was so wise. There's no way we're going to get another game in. But yeah, I had wrestlers about to go to the NCAA tournament and that plug got pulled. Baseball team out. I had track team just about to get on a bus and go. And it was a tough time. I think granting the extra year of eligibility helped ease the blow. But again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. An extra year of eligibility means an extra year of college, which means an extra year of parents paying for college. So not every individual took advantage of that extra year of eligibility. Because again, unless you're on a full ride, that next year is not free. So it was a tough spring. And we've said 100 times, like, we think we've seen it all, and I've seen a lot, but I never saw anything like that. And there's nothing in AD 101 that teaches you how to deal with a pandemic.
You know what, Don? I've been at home games, and the Bronx Zoo is the Bronx Zoo. It is just crazy. It is rabid. It is loud. How hard do you think it was on players to have games literally in a vacuum where there's nobody in the arena, like a scrimmage?
Yeah, that's kind of what every game felt like, Leo, a scrimmage. But I'll tell you what, I'll give these teams credit. Man, did they play hard? And it was interesting. It was a different environment. We had a reporter on couple reporters up in the stands on one side. I sat on the other side across from the bench by myself. I was the only one there. No dance team, no cheerleaders, no band, no fans. You could literally hear every sneaker squeak. You could hear every play call. You could hear everything the coaches said. And we, now all these games were televised and you could hear everything the coaches said. That could be good. That could be bad. So I had to warn them a few times, like, hey guys, everything you're saying is getting picked up on a microphone because there's no crowd noise to drown it out. But I'll give the student athletes and the coaches credit. They adapted and adjusted and were resilient and played hard the entire way. But it was a weird atmosphere. And
Don,
not
were
like
there
what
any
we're used to.
No, not at all. Don, were there any sports you had to completely cancel and not play any games?
Yeah, we ended up not doing indoor track. There were state guidelines in our footprint. Our league's footprint is Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, and you just weren't allowed that many people in an indoor space. So how do you run a track meet? Our track team has 140 student athletes. And you look at the other teams, they have similar rosters. How do you run an indoor track meet with those restrictions? There was just no way to do it. We also didn't swim this year because of the limitations on pool decks. You just weren't allowed to have more than 50 people on a pool deck for a competition. We have 50 on our roster alone. So those were the only two that we didn't do. We did an abbreviated wrestling season, and we did not in the spring play any non-league games. And some of those decisions were based on just, we didn't want teams on airplanes in February and early March or in hotels. We got a later start, and let's be honest too, financially, I mean, this whole pandemic has put every college and university in a financial pinch, with the loss of NCAA revenue, the loss of ticket revenue, the loss of tuition revenue, room and board, and housing revenue, all went down. So, we tried to give them a good championship experience in abbreviated seasons.
You know what, Don, with all that's gone on from the negative, your baseball team is heading to Ruston in Louisiana to take part in the NCAA tournament as the champions of the MAC, not the MAAC, the MAC. How proud are you of this accomplishment by the Bronx hardballers?
It was kind of an unexpected championship. Not that we finished as the third seed. We were 18-16. We thought we were better than that because we did have some injuries for a couple week period, but we just got hot at the right time and went 5-0 in the playoffs. And it was, sometimes, Leo, you've been part of this, and everybody that's been part of sports, when you're picked number one and you're expected to win and you do win, it's almost relief more than joy. But when you're picked number three and you're kind of going into the tournament with not a lot of pressure, and all of a sudden you breeze through it and win, it's pure joy. I mean, it's not relief because you weren't expected to do it. It just, they played loose. But I'll tell you what, like we had one heck of a spring, and I'm going to take this moment to promote it a little bit because I just sent a report to our board of trustees today. We won the championship in field hockey. We won the championship in volleyball for the first time ever. We just won the baseball last week. We had a golfer win the individual championship and go to the NCAAs. We just had a couple of track athletes down in Florida for the NCAA regional down there. We sent 6 wrestlers out to nationals. It was just one heck of a 12-week period where it was crazy. I mean, we played spring sports and fall sports during the same season. So they were all going at once. So my staff right now is exhausted. But I said to them today in a meeting, I said, could you imagine doing what we did if we got our brains beat in most of the spring? We didn't. We won everything. We had great years across the board. That gave people some adrenaline because we don't have the staff or the facilities. We have a lot of shared facilities. So to be able to play soccer, which is normally played in the fall, and baseball at the same time, and we were going 60, 70 hours a week, but it was exhilarating because, we were winning, we had chances for championships. My coaches were very disciplined. We had almost no pauses in the spring, no issues with the virus. So, at the end of the day, as challenging as it was, I am so glad we played because, when you see a team run on the field after a championship, you do say, okay, this was kind of a pain in the ass playing this year with all the testing and the protocols, but this is why we did it. Look at that group right there. That's why we did it. And thank God we had a good year, because it made it very rewarding and worthwhile.
So Don, I know you mentioned earlier that the men's basketball head coach has been with the program for over 15 years, which is a really great feat. But oftentimes coaches use the MAC as a stepping stone to a higher paying job, especially in basketball. Why do you think the MAC is such a good proving ground for coaches moving up the ladder?
Our location has a lot to do with our success. I mean, the East Coast has so many good players, New York and Philadelphia and Baltimore and New Jersey. And our schools, none of us really, well, we do have a couple schools that have football, but our commissioner makes no bones about it. We are a basketball league. That is the primary emphasis. And we just have a history and tradition of really good coaches cutting their teeth in the MAC. It's a coaches league, but I tell you what, it's a players league too. It's a tough league to win in. Like I look at it like, if you can win at some of these schools, because we're not super resourced, we have smaller gyms. It's a lot harder to win a road game in a 3,500 seat packed gym than it is in an 18,000 seat arena. It's a lot harder, and people don't understand that. And one of the things I've always looked at with coaches is I like coaches that have won at a lower level with less resources than what I'm going to give them. So if I'm a high major AD, why wouldn't you look at our league, at somebody who's winning, who's doing it with less? I always look at, even lower level Division I coaches, Division II coaches, that Division III at times, that have been really successful. And I look at it and say, hey, if they can win there with only 2 scholarships, taking vans, having no field on campus, I'm going to give them a heck of a lot more than that and a better sell. I think this person can win. And I've always liked that model, instead of taking a high level assistant that had every advantage because of the school they were at. I like taking people that have cut their teeth at the lower level, because that's really, really hard to do. You got to do a lot of things right. That's why I think our coaches are very highly respected, because they don't have these monstrous entourages and staffs and budgets to work with. They have to really work at the recruiting. And, it comes down to, I've always said this, winning at this level, it comes down to recruiting. It comes down to scheduling. And then you got to get those 2 right to have a chance to win. But in our league, you also better be able to coach.
So is that rich coaching tradition enough of a recruiting tool? I imagine with all the protocols that were in place as of March 2020, it had to be a challenging year of recruiting, being that we could only Zoom and the players couldn't come visit campus.
Yeah, I was really worried about that, with the NCAA dead period. But all of our programs, we just did, a deep dive look in to see where our rosters are going to be for next year. And I was worried about it with, the dead period. But our rosters are mostly flush. Now, some of that is student athletes returning for the extra year of eligibility. But like anything else, the parents, the student athletes, the prospects, the coaches, they found a way and adjusted. I mean, we did all kinds of virtual tours of all of our facilities, a lot of Zoom calls. So, we signed the same number of kids that we did the year before the pandemic. Now, let's hope they're good, but we'll see. But, it did not have quite the negative effect. And it does, Abby, make you think, okay, do we need to spend all that money recruiting? If we did a lot of things that were a lot cheaper than flying people all over the country to tournaments and for official visits and all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think about it, basketball travels all over the place in July. Well, we didn't go anywhere this year, and yet we had a great recruiting. So maybe that's an area that you can say, can we continue? Trust me, I don't want Zooms all the time. I still prefer the live meetings and some of the face-to-face stuff, but I don't think Zoom's going away. You can get a lot of things done and get a pretty good comfort level, and it might be cheaper than some other options that are out there. That was
Yeah,
my plug for Zoom.
Yeah, I agree with that. So kind of branching off that, was there at least one time since last March where you thought that the light at the end of the tunnel was actually a train coming to run you over?
There wasn't one time. It was probably almost once a week.
Right.
It was the frustrating part. Coaches are all type A. Having been a coach, I know that. And they want answers. And as a leader, the frustrating part was not being able to give them answers. Like, I don't like saying, I don't know. I felt like I said, I don't know. When can we come back to campus? I don't know. When are we going to start practice? I don't know. Why are we going into quarantine? And Xavier had the same problem, but they're not going into quarantine. I don't know. And that was very, very frustrating, that you just don't have all the answers. But for the most part, our coaches had a pretty good perspective on these things. And but yeah, there were times I'm like, how are we gonna, even in the fall? Okay, we're gearing up to play basketball. How is this gonna work? And it didn't work perfectly. I mean, you saw I don't think there was a week in our league that there wasn't a schedule adjustment because of a pause by somebody in our league. So that was something we've never had to deal with, a constant reshuffling of the schedule. But, like, everybody adjusted and was resilient. It caused a lot of agita. And I felt like I got run over a train almost every day. But this spring, it started to, get better. I think the vaccine has really helped. Our comfort level, knowing how to deal with it, helped. And we had very, very few problems the last 2 months. Now, being outside helped. My dog decided to come downstairs and put on a show for everybody. So,
well, yeah, more from a personal standpoint, how hard was it for you and your family to deal with COVID?
it was probably hardest for my wife because she's not used to having me home. She works from home. So for her to have me and the kids home all day, every day is quite the adjustment. I'm a go 100 miles an hour person. I'm not home a lot. And to be sitting in my basement every day on a Zoom, searching for answers for month after month was very, very frustrating for everybody. And like I said earlier, just the unknown. I felt there were times where I felt like I was failing as a leader because I didn't have answers. And the news that I was delivering to the coaches for a long period of time was never positive. But I'm also one of these people that I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you the way it is. No, we're not playing. No, you're not coming for summer school. Yes, there's going to be budget cuts, but after a while, it's like, you feel like I'm the doom and gloom. So one of the things we started doing is every Friday, because everybody was housebound, we had a 3-question happy hour. All right. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but you had required drink, all my head coaches, all my assistants, you had to have a cocktail going. And I was only going to field 3 questions that day. And the rest of the conversation could not be about work. And that went a long way with people. We got the business part out of the way in the first 15 minutes. And then it was, let's make fun of this guy's hat. What's this person's background? Let's have some fun and just lighten it up for a little bit while. And that went really, really well for a couple of weeks. Now that got old after about 8 weeks too. But that helped kind of lighten the mood and just put everybody at ease. Like, guys, we're going to get through this together. And I'm not afraid to admit to people, I don't have every answer. I don't think there was anybody in the country, including Anthony Fauci, who had all the answers.
Yeah. So just going back to your job as athletic director, I was going to ask you, first of all, how many sports you do oversee, and I was going to ask you to showcase some of your teams that we're doing well right now. But doing your great job as you do, you already went through a bunch of them with the indoor track and field and the wrestling team. So I was just wondering, like I said, how many sports do you oversee, and then in your past, I was wondering if there was maybe one team or one athlete in your time at Ryder that you could say was one of your favorite moments there.
Well, let me answer your first question first. We have 20 sports. 6 of them are tied up in cross country, indoor and outdoor track and field. Volleyball, field hockey, men's and women's tennis, men's and women's basketball, wrestling, men's and women's swimming. I know I'm going to miss somebody and somebody's going to watch this and get mad at me. That's always the risk. Soccer. I think I said volleyball already, baseball, softball. So we have 20 sports. I don't know if there's any one moment. I mean, we did have the 12th pick in the draft in a kid named Jason Thompson in 2008. That was really special. Jesse Delavecchio, our wrestler this year, getting to the national championship as the only mid-major on ESPN that night. He didn't win that match, but to get all the way there was great. But the ones that I like, and I'm not afraid to say this, and I say this to the coaches, it's culture. Part of winning at Ryder is knowing who you are, knowing who not to recruit, and knowing that your job is to make good players great. Because we're not getting great players. We're not getting the 5-star recruit. But if we're going to win, we have to end up with 2 first-team all-league players somehow. And we have to have kind of 5-star people in order to win. And how do you do that? And how do you get that culture right in your program? And, I always say it's not sometimes it's who you don't recruit. And when you get them, it's just beginning. And we're very honest with our student athletes right off the bat. Like, when you sign your national letter of intent, go ahead and take your photos with your family, sign the NLI, put all that crap on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, all that stuff Leo has that I don't even understand what it is. And then be ready to go to work. Because that you're allowed to celebrate that, but that's not the end. Too many people think that's the end. It's the beginning, because we now have to make you better, because you're not good enough right now. We might have to tell you you're good enough and you have potential, but you're not good enough. And you need to get stronger. You need to get more skilled. You need to get more disciplined. And we're really honest with our athletes. We've spent a lot of money on practice facilities and strength and conditioning centers, those kinds of things. Player development is the key for Ryder. Yes, you have to get as good a players as you could possibly get, but somehow a good coach takes good to great. And those are the most rewarding ones when you see, oh my God, look at this kid. He or she came in and couldn't hardly get off the bench, and now all of a sudden they're player of the year. And you see it on the academic side too. You take some risks every now and then, and the first semester doesn't go well. We had a player on the female side this year, I won't mention names or the sport, that was well below a 2.0 her freshman year. At the end of her junior year, she had a 4.0. Like, those are the things that remind you that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, let me tell you, I remember Jason Thompson playing with the Kings, and he kind of personified with what you were saying, kind of undersized, but pulled down to rebounds with the best of them. So let's say you have a future number 12 pick in the NBA draft, or even some prospective student, or even me wanting to come visit you at Ryder. Where's someplace I would be able to go reach out to find out some more information about the school?
Well, it's pretty easy. Our email address for the university is ryder.edu, and our website or I'm sorry, our website for the university is rider.edu. And the website for our athletics department is Go Bronx, no O, Leo, gobronx.com. And you can find anything there, but we have a great location. You know, we're 40 minutes from the Jersey Shore, 30 minutes from Philly, 45 minutes from New York City, beautiful campus. So, you know, it's an exciting, dynamic place. And quite honestly, it wasn't as exciting or dynamic this year as it's going to be, you know, now that we're getting out of this virus situation. It's a fun place to go to school.
Donald Harnum, athletic director for the Rider University. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for taking the time to come and meet with us today. You just got me going. Your attitude about winning and your perspective is spot on. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and hope you have continued success in everything you do. And thanks again for coming. And this is Jeffrey Neal Fox, publisher of It Sports Magazine, with another segment of It Sports Magazine TV. See you next week.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Great questions. Appreciate it.